Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And Xbox Game Pass Wave 2 for the month of October has officially been revealed. And let me tell you this right now, you subscribers out there are probably going to be pretty happy because this is another really strong lineup with some new day one releases that looks quite interesting, and it also comes included with a big AAA game that just released earlier this year. Actually, one of this year's best releases for that matter. So we will go over that today and talk about some of its highlights. Then also, could Sony possibly be looking for a big acquisition in response to Activision Blizzard? Well, there is some belief that this may actually happen, and we're going to discuss that today as well. Before we get started, though, just a little reminder, if you enjoy these daily gaming news updates, do subscribe and ring that bell. About 50% of you currently aren't subscribed, so let's go and change that. If you want to keep up to date with the daily gaming news dose, ring that bell. That way, every time I post a new video, it'll be delivered directly to your device. As always, I truly do appreciate you all. With that said, though, let's just go and jump right into things. Starting off with a new reimagined console that's catching a lot of buzz online, and I'd say for good reason. Analogue is back at it again, and they have a great reputation for making top-tier reimagined retro consoles with improvements that readies them for modern-day gaming. I actually own their Analog Pocket as an example, which is a reimagined Game Boy, and it's an amazing device. It's arguably the best way to play Game Boy games in 2023. So there is a reason that people get excited when Analog announces a new console. And what they're about ready to do might very well possibly be their most exciting effort yet, because they just announced the Analogue 3D, which is a reimagined Nintendo 64 that can play your Nintendo 64 cartridges at 4K resolution. Now, we have seen other companies attempt to do similar things, and so far, nobody has really had that much success, but according to Analog, their new console is different. This is what they said: reimagining the Nintendo 64 with 100% compatibility and accuracy, and what I know is necessary for it to be just like the experience we all had when we first played it, in the context it was created for CRTs, namely, is not something anyone has achieved, not even close. They then continue on to say this is why 4K is so important for 3D games. FPGA plus 4K equals 100% control over everything in every detail. Analog 3D performs like a masterful orchestra, a symphony, because again, everything is designed from scratch in-house with complete control over every dynamic. Therefore, every nuance is able to be calibrated to an unprecedented degree. To me, it's either this or buy an original Nintendo 64 and a CRT. End of story. So, I mean, clearly they have a lot of confidence that this thing is going to be groundbreaking for the Nintendo 64 community. They even believe that it's a better option than what Nintendo is offering with Switch Online, which honestly it very well might be. Switch Online is not perfect when it comes to Nintendo 64 games. There has been a few titles that has had some issues. The only problem here, though, is that even though Analog, yes, makes high-quality consoles, they do also have some other annoying issues. Now, they say the 3D will come in 2024, but if you're aware of how this company works, what's most likely going to happen here is that it's going to be a highly limited pre-order item. It's going to sell out fast, and then the fans that were lucky enough to get through pre-orders, they will have to wait for an extended period of time before they get said console in their hands. Actually, getting their console is kind of the frustrating part. So if you are interested, all I can kind of say here is good luck. As for its price, though, based on how they're describing this thing, it's probably going to be fairly expensive. I'm thinking at least $400, if not even more than that. I mean, we'll kind of see, and that might not even include its accessories. They did tease its wireless controller as well. It can support 4 controllers, and it appears to be a more usable Nintendo 64 controller in partnership with maybe 8-bit dough. For the time being, though, I'll just kind of keep an eye on this situation, and as we learn more, of course, I'll keep you all updated. Moving on, though, Lies of P hit a major milestone. In less than 1 month, it's already sold 1 million units worldwide, which is incredibly impressive for not only a new IP, but you also have to consider that it launched as a day one Xbox Game Pass title. So they have a lot more players than just 1 million, and they also secured that Game Pass money on top of that. So this is a breakout hit, and I'm going to tell you this right now. it's well deserved. Now, I've yet to finish this game myself, but based on what I have played, I think it's quietly one of the best games that's released this year, which, that's saying a lot. 2023, as we all know, has been a huge year for gaming, but even still, definitely don't sleep on Lies of P. If you like the Soulsborne genre and if you're up for a challenge, this is among the best the genre has to offer, and even though it's clearly inspired by games like Bloodborne, it still also has its own ideas. This is not just some simple clone and nothing more. The lore set in the Pinocchio universe, it works very well in this game, and even from a technical standpoint, it's highly polished. It runs great. I just think that Lies of P is a great all-around game, and I'm thrilled to see it have success. Let's just kind of keep it going, though, because I think this game and studio might have a legitimate future going forward. Speaking of games available in Xbox Game Pass, though, we need to talk about the month of October because they just revealed its Wave 2 games, and check this out. They just dropped Like a Dragon Ishin today. Yeah, you can go play that right now. And then soon you'll get Frog Detective: The Entire Mystery, F1 Manager 23, Headbangers Rhythm Royale, Just Ant, Minico's Night Market, the Dead Space remake, and then lastly, Cities Skylines 2. Now, this is a fantastic lineup from pretty much all angles here. Not only do you get some big AAA games, but you also get several day one releases. We'll kind of go over both of those real quick, but first up, we have to talk about Like a Dragon Ishin. Again, that launched on Game Pass just today, and this is a spin-off on the Yakuza series set in the Edo period. This game actually released just earlier this year, and if you like the Yakuza series, or really if you just like good single-player story-driven games, definitely check this game out. The Yakuza games are always known to be gripping, just wild rides that keeps you emotionally attached. And because this is a spin-off, you can play this one without having previous knowledge of the series. The Dead Space remake, though, this is another game that just released earlier this year, and truthfully, it's one of the best games that's released in 2023. It's easily an all-time great horror game. A lot of people like to refer to it as Resident Evil in space if you've played those games. And it's coming to Game Pass just in time for the spectacular month of October. It will be available on October 26th. And I mean, if you're looking for a good, creepy Halloween game to play, this is the one. You're not going to get much better than the Dead Space remake. I can't emphasize this enough, but this is a must-play game for any horror fan out there. Now, as for your day one releases here, there's really two big highlights here. One is a new adventure game by the name of Just Ant. This is a new IP that focuses on climbing. They say that you need to master your climbing tools as you ascend a mysterious, ever-changing tower. There's several different biomes that you can explore, and this is really a gorgeous game if you look at it. I just kind of hope that it's as good as it looks, because it's one of those games that could really stand out if it is. I mean, it's just unique enough, and it also looks good enough that there is a chance that this game could really come out and wow some people. I mean, we'll see soon enough, but it will be available on October 31st. Cities Skylines 2, though, this is really the other big day one inclusion here. The first game was crazy popular, especially over on PC. It had millions and millions of players, and basically, it's a city building simulator. It's got its own economy, and you can kind of build your own city from the ground up. It will launch directly into PC Game Pass on October 24th. Now, there is one other day one release here that I want to talk about, though, that might be worth paying attention to, and that's Headbangers Rhythm Battle Royale. It'll also be available on October 31st, and as the name implies, it's a battle royale game where you battle it out through various musical mini-games until you're the last one standing. I mean, this is a creative and kind of goofy idea for this genre, and if implemented correctly, this could be another surprise hit. We saw it happen with Fall Guys just a few years back on PlayStation Plus, and well, Game Pass might be able to help this game take off in a similar way. I mean, again, we'll see soon enough on October 31st, but it's definitely one worth paying attention to. All in all, though, the next 2 weeks look pretty busy for you Game Pass subscribers, and this is already coming off a major hot streak for Game Pass with games like Starfield, Lies of P, and of course, Forza as well, which launched just last week. Which one to start with, though, is always kind of the question here. Now, we do also have a pretty big story for PlayStation as well, because speculation is swirling right now that Sony is prepping to respond to the Activision Blizzard acquisition with some buyouts of their own. Now, first off, some of the quote-unquote leaks floating around are complete nonsense. Let's just go and get that out of the way. I've talked about this on the channel before, but acquisitions don't leak early. It's very rare because there is legal things that goes into acquisition discussions. It's not something that's openly shared, and therefore that type of stuff rarely leaks online. Anytime you do see somebody claiming to have inside information for an acquisition, that's a pretty good sign to just ignore them. They're more than likely full of it. I mean, how many times have we heard Sony has acquired Take-Two, Square Enix, or From Software? It's rumored every single year, and for some reason, I have to continuously remind people that this is not true. However, disregarding the latest leak that Sony is acquiring Bandai Namco, they're not, but an analyst is predicting that Sony will respond to the Activision Blizzard acquisition with their own buyouts. This is from Piers Harding Rolls from Ampere Analysis, and this is what he said. Sony surely is under pressure to react, even after their Bungie acquisition. I expect further investments and acquisitions for PlayStation, including a large one that would move the needle for them in a meaningful way. Now, I do agree with this, but I don't in the same way that some people are necessarily taking it. A lot of people are looking at this quote and they're immediately jumping to the conclusion that Sony is going to go out and buy a big-time publisher. But the truth is, that's easier said than done. First off, they would need to find a publisher willing to sell, and even if they can find one, Sony doesn't really have the same amount of money as Microsoft to just throw around. So it would be much more difficult for them to afford some of these big-time publishers, especially if these publishers garner interest from other big companies as well, and well, then they could kind of get into a bidding war. You also have to kind of consider that Sony is the market leader, and I mean, we just saw this with Microsoft. They had a ton of trouble getting Activision approved by regulators, so can you imagine the trouble that Sony would go through as the market leader? I mean, like I said, this is easier said than done, but I do, however, completely 100% believe that Sony will acquire more studios. Now, not necessarily because this analyst said so, but rather because Sony has already told us that themselves. So this is going to happen, and like he said, there could theoretically be a large acquisition that moves the needle. Now, that doesn't mean that it'll be a publisher per se. It's definitely not going to be Take-Two, I'll tell you that right now, but there are still some big independent studios available. We also know that the Embracer Group might be willing to sell off some of their studios. They do own Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal. Maybe Sony could have interest for one of those, and I think that those would fit the bill of a larger studio that can move the needle. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but I think some fans currently have their expectations set a little bit too high. That's all I'm trying to say here. Just rein those expectations back just a little bit. Now, maybe they could acquire one of these smaller publishers in the future. Konami is in kind of an interesting situation just because they got away from console gaming for some time. But even then, I would believe absolutely zero leaks on this topic. For the time being, the best that we can do here is speculate. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, do you plan on revisiting Halo Infinite now that Season 5 is here? And the results here are split right down the middle. 38% said yes, while 38% also said no. Now, 19% are still undecided, though, which can tip that a little bit. It just kind of all depends if they can find the time, and that's a very real situation right now. We are in that holiday period, and I'm sure most of you all have probably noticed there's a lot of games releasing right now, so it is difficult finding that time to play all of these games. Multiplayer games, though, you can kind of play them on the side as you're playing through some of these other games as well, and right now I have been hearing a lot of positive things about Halo Infinite Season 5. It sounds like it's really good, and it really seems like 343 has finally started to hit their groove. After a well-documented slow start, this is the third season that they've released this year, and this might possibly be their best yet. So if you are a Halo fan, you might want to go and give it a try and see what you think as well. I mean, this game was always good. That's never been its problem. It just needed more content, and hey, if you've taken a long break, well, it's got a lot more content now. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.